The courtroom was so silent that even the sound of a pen dropping would have echoed across the walls. Everyone's attention was fixed on the teenager sitting at the defendant's table, a 17-year-old boy with sharp eyes and a smirk plastered across his face. He slouched in his chair, arms folded, as though he were watching some kind of boring school presentation instead of standing trial for taking another person's life. Across the room, the victim's family sat in a tense row. The mother's eyes were red and swollen, her hands trembling as she clutched a framed photo of her son. Her husband sat beside her, stone-faced but clearly broken inside. Their daughter, barely in her 20s, bit her lip, holding back tears as the prosecutor described what had happened on that awful night. The judge presiding over the case was none other than Judge Judy, known for her no-nonsense attitude, piercing stare, and an instinct for cutting through lies faster than anyone else. Though this was one of her more serious cases, she maintained the same sharp authority she was famous for. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, phone records, witness statements, everything pointed to the boy, whose name was Ryan Collins. He had been out with friends one night when an argument broke out with another teenager named Michael, the victim. What started as a heated confrontation escalated quickly, ending with Ryan attacking Michael in a blind rage. By the time help arrived, it was too late. But the worst part wasn't just the crime. It was what came after. As the trial went on, Ryan showed no trace of remorse. Every time the victim's name was mentioned, he rolled his eyes or smirked. When the prosecutor displayed photos of the crime scene, Ryan leaned back in his chair, whispering jokes to his attorney and even chuckling under his breath. The jurors glanced at him with disgust, and even Judge Judy's patience began to wear thin. Then came the most painful moment for the victim's family, when they were asked to give their impact statements. Michael's mother stood up first, holding the picture frame close to her chest. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "My son was only 18. He had dreams, plans, he was supposed to go to college this fall. And now I'll never hear his laugh again, never see him walk through our door." Tears streamed down her face as she tried to continue. "You didn't just take his life. You took ours too." For a brief moment, the courtroom held its breath. It was raw, it was human, and even the toughest hearts in the room softened. But not Ryan's. As the mother wept, Ryan let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. The sound sliced through the silence like a knife. Gasps erupted around the room. The prosecutor froze mid-note. The mother looked up in shock, her tears replaced by disbelief and fury. Judge Judy's gavel slammed down. "Mr. Collins," she barked. "You think this is funny?" Ryan shrugged, smirking even wider. "People die every day," he muttered under his breath. That was it. The courtroom exploded into whispers. The victim's father jumped to his feet, his fists clenched. "You monster," he shouted before being restrained by court officers. Judge Judy's glare could have cut steel. "You will not disrespect this court, this family, or this process," she said, her voice low and firm. "If you so much as smile again, I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand me?" Ryan leaned back and smiled again, though smaller this time, as if daring her to follow through. His attorney looked mortified. He whispered something in Ryan's ear, but the teenager brushed him off. The kid thought he was untouchable. He thought he could manipulate everyone with that smug grin and those cold eyes. But what Ryan didn't know was that someone sitting quietly behind him knew the truth, a truth that would destroy that arrogance in a matter of minutes. His older sister, Emily Collins, sat in the second row. She hadn't said a word during the trial. Her head stayed down, her hands gripping her knees tightly. For weeks, she had been torn between family loyalty and conscience. She had kept a secret, one that would change everything. Ryan had told her something the night of the incident, something that haunted her every time she closed her eyes. She had begged him to go to the police, to tell the truth, but he refused. Instead, he laughed it off, saying no one could ever prove anything. Now, watching him mock the family of the boy he killed, something inside her broke. Her mother, who sat beside her, didn't notice the tears streaming down Emily's face. Judge Judy called for order, the noise in the courtroom finally dying down. The mother of the victim was escorted back to her seat, still sobbing. Emily took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding, but she knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. She raised her hand slightly, just enough to catch the attention of one of the bailiffs. I need to speak," she whispered. The bailiff hesitated. "Miss, are you a witness?" Emily nodded, her voice trembling. "I have information about what really happened that night." The courtroom froze again. Even Ryan turned around, his smirk faltering for the first time. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "Step forward, young lady." Emily stood up slowly, her legs shaking. As she walked toward the witness stand, she could feel her brother's eyes burning into her. He whispered something under his breath, a warning, maybe even a threat, but she didn't stop. The truth was coming, and there was no turning back. Emily's hands trembled as she was sworn in. Her voice was barely audible when she promised to tell the truth, but there was something in her eyes, a mixture of fear and resolve, that even Judge Judy noticed. The courtroom was deathly quiet again, everyone waiting to see what she would say. Ryan's lawyer shifted nervously, whispering to his client, but Ryan only stared at his sister, his smirk gone now, replaced by a cold glare that could cut glass. He knew something was coming, and he didn't like it. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Miss Collins," she said, her tone calm but firm. "You've stated you have information related to this case. Please explain what you mean by that." Emily swallowed hard. I wasn't planning to say anything at first," she began, her voice cracking. "But after seeing what just happened, after hearing him laugh while that poor woman was crying, I can't stay quiet anymore." She looked directly at her brother. "Ryan, I warned you. I told you this day would come." Ryan shook his head, mouthing something only she could see, "Don't you dare." But she continued. "That night, he told everyone it was an accident. That it was self-defense. But it wasn't. I know because he called me after it happened. He was panicking, but not because he was scared of what he'd done. He was scared of getting caught." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor immediately stood up. "Your Honor, may we allow her to elaborate on this statement?" Judge Judy nodded once. "Go ahead, Miss Collins. Speak clearly." Emily took a shaky breath. He and Michael had been arguing for weeks. It wasn't random. Ryan thought Michael had spread rumors about him, saying things that embarrassed him at school. He couldn't let it go. He told me more than once that he wanted to teach Michael a lesson. I thought he was just angry, just talking. I didn't think he meant it. Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "She's lying," he shouted. "Order." Judge Judy snapped. "You will remain silent until it's your turn to speak." Emily flinched but didn't stop. He waited for Michael after a party. He had been drinking, and he brought a knife. When he called me, he said Michael wouldn't be bothering him anymore. Her voice broke. He laughed when he said it. Gasps filled the room. The victim's mother covered her mouth, shaking uncontrollably. Ryan's attorney buried his face in his hands, whispering something to himself. Judge Judy's expression hardened, but she didn't interrupt. "Continue," she said quietly. Emily nodded slowly. "I begged him to tell the truth. I told him it would be worse if he lied, but he said he had a plan. He made up the story about self-defense and even asked one of his friends to lie for him. He said if we both stuck to the same story, no one could prove anything. He told me to keep quiet or he'd make sure I regretted it." Tears streamed down her cheeks now. But seeing him here today, laughing at the family he destroyed. I can't protect him anymore. Ryan jumped to his feet. "You're insane. You're doing this to make yourself look good." He pointed at her, his voice cracking with anger. "You think anyone's going to believe you? You're just jealous I got attention for once." Judge Judy slammed her gavel. "Mr. Collins, sit down." The bailiff moved closer, prepared to restrain him if necessary. The audience murmured again, the tension thick enough to choke on. Emily turned toward her brother, her tone soft now, almost pleading. "You could have told the truth, Ryan. You could have said you were sorry. But you laughed. You mocked them like their pain meant nothing. I can't let that go on." For a moment, Ryan said nothing. His chest rose and fell quickly, his face red with fury and panic. He turned toward his lawyer, whispering frantically. The lawyer looked lost, caught between his duty and the sinking realization that the case had just fallen apart. Judge Judy folded her hands on the bench, her gaze sharp. "Miss Collins, are you willing to give an official statement under oath about everything you've just said?" "Yes, Your Honor," Emily said without hesitation. "I'll tell you everything. I'll give the messages he sent me, the ones where he bragged about what he did." That last sentence hit like a bomb. The prosecutor immediately requested that the court recess so they could obtain the evidence. Judge Judy agreed, but not before addressing Ryan directly. "Mr. Collins," she said, her tone like ice. "If what your sister is saying proves true, not only are you guilty of murder, but you have also perjured yourself under oath. And let me be clear, this court does not tolerate arrogance or deceit. You may think this is a game, but it's not. This is a court of law, and real lives were destroyed because of your actions." Ryan's smirk was gone completely now. His eyes darted nervously between his sister and the judge. For the first time, he looked afraid. The victim's family sat frozen, barely able to process what they had just heard. The mother was crying again, but this time it was a different kind of cry, a mix of grief, relief, and the faintest glimmer of justice. When the court adjourned temporarily, everyone began to move, whispering, staring. Reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads. The sound of shuffling papers and quiet murmurs filled the room. But Emily remained seated, staring at the floor, tears dripping onto her hands. A bailiff approached her gently. "You did the right thing," he said softly. She shook her head. "I don't know if I did," she whispered. "I just couldn't keep lying anymore." Ryan was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs after an outburst in the hallway. He shouted at Emily as he was dragged away, his voice echoing down the corridor. "You ruined me. You're dead to me." Emily didn't respond. She couldn't even look at him. The guilt was heavy, but the truth was heavier, and she had finally put it down. Judge Judy watched the chaos settle before standing and leaving the bench. She had seen many cases in her career, liars, manipulators, and those who tried to twist justice, but there was something about this one that lingered. Maybe it was the arrogance of the boy. Maybe it was the courage of his sister. Or maybe it was the image of a grieving mother being laughed at by the person who took her son's life. As the courtroom emptied, Emily sat alone, staring at the chair where her brother had been moments ago. For the first time in years, she wasn't scared of him. She was just sad that the boy she once knew had turned into a monster she could no longer recognize. Outside, cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the world began to talk about what had just happened. But inside that courtroom, there was only silence and the faint echo of a truth that could no longer be buried. The next morning, the courtroom was packed to the brim. Reporters lined the back rows, their cameras ready. The story had spread like wildfire overnight. Teen killer's sister turns against him in court. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Emily sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the floor. She hadn't slept at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her brother's face, angry, betrayed, and full of hate. She had done what she believed was right, but that didn't make it easy. Deep down, she still loved him. He was her brother. But love couldn't erase what he had done. Ryan was escorted in by 2 officers. The change in him was striking. Gone was the arrogant grin, the swagger, the mockery. His wrists were cuffed, his face pale. He looked smaller somehow, like all that fake confidence had finally drained away. He didn't look at Emily this time. He couldn't. Judge Judy entered the courtroom and took her seat. The murmurs died down instantly. She glanced briefly at Ryan, then at Emily, before addressing the court. We are here to continue the case of the state versus Ryan Collins. I understand that new evidence has been submitted overnight by the prosecution. The prosecutor stood. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Collins provided several text messages and voice recordings from the night of the crime. These communications directly contradict the defendant's previous statements and demonstrate premeditation. Judge Judy nodded. Proceed. The prosecutor pressed a button, and the first recording played through the courtroom speakers. Ryan's voice filled the room, careless and cruel. I'm done with him, man. He thinks he can talk about me like that? Nah, not anymore. After tonight, he won't be running his mouth again. There was a pause, followed by laughter, Ryan's unmistakable laugh. The victim's mother covered her face, her shoulders shaking. Even the defense attorney looked sick to his stomach. Another clip played, this time a voicemail to Emily. His voice was quieter, almost whispering, but the words were chilling. Don't freak out, but it's done. He came at me, and I took care of it. He won't mess with me again. Just stick to the story, okay? It was self-defense. Nobody can prove otherwise. The room fell silent. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Mr. Collins, she said finally, would you like to explain this? Ryan's lawyer hesitated before whispering, don't say anything yet. But Ryan couldn't stay quiet. That doesn't mean what you think it means, he snapped. He attacked me. I was just defending myself. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. Your tone suggests otherwise. That laughter, those words, do you think they reflect self-defense? Or do they sound like someone who planned to hurt another person? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have an answer. Emily sat frozen. Hearing those recordings again made her stomach turn. She remembered that night so clearly, the panic in his voice, the guilt that never came. The prosecutor handed a printed copy of the text messages to the judge. Your Honor, these texts were sent hours before the confrontation. The defendant wrote, I'm going to make him pay. No one embarrasses me and gets away with it. Judge Judy scanned the papers, then set them down. Her voice was calm but sharp enough to slice through the tension. It appears, Mr. Collins, that your actions were not only intentional but motivated by revenge. Ryan's lawyer sighed, rubbing his temples. Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress. He had been provoked repeatedly. We request leniency, considering his age and the circumstances. Judge Judy shook her head slowly. Emotional distress is not a license to kill. Her eyes met Ryan's. You had every opportunity to walk away. Instead, you chose violence, and worse, you chose arrogance. Laughing in this courtroom, mocking a grieving family, it shows a complete lack of remorse. Ryan finally broke. You don't know what it was like, he shouted. Everyone hated me. They pushed me around, called me names, treated me like trash. I just wanted respect. Judge Judy leaned forward. And you thought you'd earn respect by taking a life? He didn't respond. His head dropped, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted to scare him. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time, he sounded human, broken, desperate. But it was too late for that. The prosecutor spoke firmly. Intent doesn't disappear after the act, Your Honor. The defendant's messages, recordings, and behavior before and after the crime all demonstrate premeditation. The state requests that he be tried as an adult and given the maximum sentence allowed by law. Judge Judy nodded. The court will take that under advisement. She turned back to Emily. Miss Collins, I want to commend you for your courage. I understand this was not an easy decision, but truth must come before loyalty, especially when justice is at stake. Emily nodded weakly. I just couldn't watch him lie anymore. Judge Judy gave a small nod of understanding. Sometimes doing the right thing hurts the most. Ryan finally looked up, his eyes red and filled with fury. "You think you're better than me?" he hissed at his sister. "You think turning on me makes you some kind of hero?" Emily met his gaze, her voice trembling but steady. "No. I'm not a hero. I just couldn't live with myself knowing what you did. You might hate me now, but one day, maybe you'll understand." He looked away, clenching his fists. Judge Judy struck her gavel once. "This court will reconvene tomorrow for sentencing. Until then, the defendant will remain in custody." The officers stepped forward, guiding Ryan out. He didn't resist, but as he passed Emily, he muttered something under his breath, so soft that no one else could hear. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. When the courtroom finally emptied, Emily remained seated again, staring at the empty space where her brother had stood. The victim's family approached her quietly. The mother, eyes still swollen from crying, placed a trembling hand on Emily's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling the truth." Emily couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. The woman gave her a small, sad smile before walking away, leaving Emily alone in the echo of everything that had just unfolded. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest sense of peace, painful, fragile, but real. She had lost her brother to his own darkness, but maybe, just maybe, she had helped bring light to someone else's grief. Outside, reporters swarmed again, shouting questions and flashing cameras. But Emily didn't answer any of them. She walked past them silently, her face pale but resolute. She didn't want fame or attention. She just wanted the truth to finally rest. As she stepped into the crisp morning air, she closed her eyes for a moment. The weight on her chest didn't vanish, but it felt lighter than before. Inside the courthouse, Judge Judy prepared for the final day of the trial, knowing it would end not with satisfaction, but with the solemn weight of justice being served. The next day, the courtroom carried a strange stillness. The air was heavy, filled with the kind of tension that lingers before a storm finally breaks. The final hearing had come. The crowd was smaller this time, mostly reporters, court officials, and the two families who would forever be connected by tragedy. Emily sat near the front, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She hadn't spoken to anyone since yesterday's hearing. Her mother hadn't come, she couldn't bear to watch one child condemn another. Emily understood, though it hurt more than she could say. When Ryan entered, he looked different again. His once careless posture was gone. He wore a plain gray jumpsuit, his wrists bound in handcuffs. His face was pale, his eyes sunken. For the first time since the trial began, he didn't look like a defiant teenager trying to act tough. He looked like a frightened boy who finally understood what he'd done. Judge Judy took her seat, her expression solemn. She didn't look angry anymore, only tired, like she had seen too many lives destroyed by pride and poor choices. "Mr. Collins," she began, "this court has reviewed all the evidence, the testimonies, and the new materials provided by your sister. The facts are clear and undisputed. You planned to harm Michael Harris. You lured him into a confrontation, and you ended his life. Then you lied about it, showing no remorse until the truth was exposed." Ryan kept his head down. He didn't speak. Judge Judy continued, her voice even. "This is not a moment for revenge, but for justice. And justice demands that your actions have consequences. Before sentencing, the court will hear final statements from both sides." The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, the state believes the evidence shows deliberate intent. The defendant not only took a life but also mocked the victim's family and attempted to manipulate the system. We ask that he be sentenced as an adult and serve the maximum penalty allowed." The defense attorney rose slowly. His voice was soft, almost defeated. "Your Honor, my client is 17. He made a terrible, irreversible mistake. He has shown signs of remorse, though perhaps late. I ask the court to consider his age and the potential for rehabilitation. He is not beyond redemption." Judge Judy nodded. "Thank you. Mr. Collins, you may speak if you wish." For a moment, Ryan said nothing. The silence stretched on so long that people began to wonder if he would refuse. But then, he lifted his head. His voice was quiet and hoarse. "I know nothing I say can fix what I did," he began. "I didn't think it would end like that. I didn't mean for him to die. I was angry, and I wanted to scare him. But I went too far. And when it happened, I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I lied. I told myself it wasn't my fault." He looked over at the victim's family. The mother stared back at him with tears in her eyes. "I laughed in court," he said, his voice breaking. "Not because it was funny. I think I was scared. I didn't know how to deal with it, so I acted like it didn't matter. But it did. I know I ruined your lives. I know I took someone you loved. I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't want to be that person anymore." He turned slightly toward Emily. "And you. I hate what you did, but I get it now. You told the truth because I couldn't. I was so sure I could lie my way out of this, but you stopped me. Maybe you saved me from becoming something even worse." Emily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time since it all began, she saw a glimpse of the brother she once knew. Judge Judy let the silence linger before she spoke. "Remorse is a step toward redemption, Mr. Collins, but it cannot undo the harm you caused. The law cannot heal pain, it can only deliver consequences. You made choices, and those choices took a life. You will now face the result of those choices." She paused, then delivered her verdict. "Ryan Collins, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life in state prison. You will serve this sentence as an adult." The gavel struck once. The sound echoed like a final heartbeat. The courtroom remained still. No one cheered, no one clapped. Justice, when it comes, rarely feels like victory. The officers stepped forward to escort Ryan away. He turned once more toward his sister. His lips moved, though no sound came out. Emily thought he said "I'm sorry," but she couldn't be sure. As he was let out, she watched him disappear through the heavy doors. Part of her wanted to run after him, to hold on to what little was left of the brother she once protected. But she stayed seated, tears slipping silently down her face. The victim's family stood nearby. The mother approached Emily again, her expression softer this time. "You did what most people couldn't," she said gently. "You told the truth, even when it broke you." Emily nodded, unable to speak. The woman reached out, squeezing her hand before leaving the courtroom with her husband and daughter. When everyone else had gone, Emily stayed behind. The benches were empty now, the room quiet except for the faint hum of the ceiling lights. She closed her eyes and exhaled deeply. The truth had cost her everything, a brother, her mother's trust, her peace, but at least the lies were over. Outside, the sun was starting to set, spilling gold through the courthouse windows. Emily stepped outside, the cool air brushing against her skin. Reporters shouted questions again, but she ignored them. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. She walked to the steps, sat down, and watched the world move on. Life went on, even after tragedy, even after justice. But she knew nothing would ever be the same. Somewhere behind her, Judge Judy exited quietly, surrounded by clerks. She glanced toward Emily, then walked past without a word. She didn't need to say anything. Her expression said it all, a mix of sorrow and respect. Emily watched as the judge's car pulled away, then looked up at the fading light. She whispered softly, "Goodbye, Ryan." Her voice trembled, but there was peace in it. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe without the weight of secrets crushing her chest. As night fell, she stood and walked down the courthouse steps. The cameras had left, the reporters gone, the world already chasing another story. But this story would live with her forever. The pain wouldn't vanish overnight, and neither would the memories. But deep inside, she knew the truth mattered more than anything else. The truth had finally spoken, and though it shattered her family, it had also freed her. Far away, in a small holding cell, Ryan sat alone, staring at the cold concrete wall. He replayed his sister's words again and again. The anger was still there, but underneath it, something else had begun to grow: understanding, regret, and maybe the faint hope of change. He didn't know what his future would be, but for the first time, he stopped lying to himself. Back outside, Emily looked at the courthouse one last time before walking away into the night. The city lights flickered on around her, bright and distant. The world kept turning, indifferent and endless, but she carried one truth with her, that doing the right thing might destroy you, but it's still worth doing. And somewhere deep inside, she hoped that someday, her brother would understand that too,